Hey everyone, and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. Want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news report coming out from Russia, and today I have information out of Russia's port of Ust-Luga in the Leningrad region that oil exports have been decreased by 50% this month due to Ukrainian drone strikes on critical infrastructure supplying this port. Let's talk about this new report here on your screen. Russia's Ust-Luga oil export terminal halves production after strikes. The oil export terminal will operate at around 350,000 barrels per day in September, about half of its usual capacity following damage to pipeline infrastructure from Ukraine. Okay, so it looks like Ukrainian drone strikes on critical infrastructure that supplies this port has been able to damage 50% of the capacity at the Ust-Luga oil export terminal. Just over the weekend on Sunday, we had a massive drone attack on the Ust-Luga oil export terminals. You can see here in the picture, and actually on the right side of your screen in that white box, that's actually a large portion of this oil export terminal that came under attack and was destroyed. That's a main processing unit for this terminal. And this is owned by Novatek, a major gas company inside of Russia. We had that report that came out on Sunday. Unfortunately, I wasn't here to report that to you guys, but I did let you know about that on Monday. And also, just about a week or so ago, we had numerous strikes onto the Druzhba oil pipeline. We had several different pumping stations, one of them in the Bryansk region, also another in the Tambov region of Russia, coming under attack and being destroyed. And this halted the oil flows through the Druzhba oil pipeline, which directly supplies oil to this export terminal. So major hits here. We're going to talk about numerous things in this video today. We also have information that the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Russia's Samara region that was attacked yesterday has halted production after that massive drone attack on the facility. So that is huge news today. Yet again, another oil refinery in Russia going down for repairs due to Ukrainian drone attacks. And also today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has made several statements today to the press and also discussing security guarantees for Ukraine. So we're going to go over some of the statements he has made today as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the news. We got a lot of things to show you here today. Let's go ahead and hop on over to Ukrinform. This is a mainstream news outlet, going to give us some good information regarding this Ust-Luga port having its production. And it says Ukrainian strikes have Russian oil exports from Ust-Luga port. This today being reported by Reuters, and the date here says August 28th, 2025. So this was actually starting to break yesterday evening, being widely reported today. And it says successful Ukrainian drone strikes on Russia's oil and gas infrastructure have caused a 50% drop in oil exports from the Ust-Luga port on the Baltic Sea. This is according to Reuters, citing well-informed sources, Ukrinform reports. Russia's Ust-Luga oil export terminal will operate at around 350,000 barrels per day in September, or about half its usual capacity following damage to pipeline infrastructure from Ukrainian drone attacks, the article reads. The sources did not specify which pipeline was damaged, but confirmed that repair efforts were underway with no clear timeline for full restoration. The fall in Ust-Luga capacity will result in oil volumes being diverted to Russia's Primorsk and Novorossiysk ports, the sources said. That may help to limit export losses. So don't be surprised if Ukraine starts going after these ports now, especially the Novorossiysk port. That's an easily accessible port that Ukraine has attacked many different times. So Russia will probably try to divert a lot of their oil volumes down there. This is going to be in the Krasnodar Krai region. We'll probably be seeing a lot of attacks onto that port as well. Then the Primorsk port is going to be far east of Russia, or in Russian territory, that is, excuse me. It also says here the disruption shows how recent Ukrainian strikes targeting key energy facilities are complicating Russian exports and may lead to supply disruptions. In August, Ukraine successfully hit the Uneka pumping station in Russia's Bryansk region, a critical hub for delivering crude oil to Ust-Luga. Ukrainian strikes have also impacted oil exports via the Druzhba pipeline. So yeah, we had a report, I think it was yesterday, the day before, from Peter Zajarto, that's the foreign minister out of Hungary. He was claiming that apparently the Druzhba oil pipeline is going to be somewhat back online as of, I think, today or yesterday. But the supplies right now are very minimal going through there. It's kind of like a test run. Apparently, the Russians were able to find out a way to get around the destruction of the Uneka oil pumping station, and they've been able to get it back online, but it's a very small amount of oil that is going through there right now. So let's hop on over to X. I've got numerous things to show you over here as well. So this is from Euromaidan Press. Last night, Ukraine struck a key pumping station of Russia's Druzhba oil pipeline. The Uneka station pumps oil to Russia's Ust-Luga port, the starting point of Shadow Fleet tankers, and to Russia's allied countries Belarus, Hungary, and Slovakia. It was the second attack on the Uneka station. Recently, another station, Nikolskoye -1, was also struck, temporarily suspending the pipeline's operations. So you can see the date here was August 21st. Just want to kind of briefly cover this story in case you didn't hear about it. So the Uneka oil pumping station that came under attack. So here's a picture to kind of show you here where Uneka is located. It's actually in Russia's Bryansk region, just north of Ukraine. This is one of the final pumping stations before oil flows go into Belarus, which helps out Russia with several refineries over here. And a lot of oil goes through Ukraine on over to Slovakia and Hungary. These are two nations that were really complaining a lot recently that Ukraine attacked this Druzhba oil pipeline. They were even threatening to cut off diesel over to Ukraine and also energy supplies to Ukraine. We haven't seen that happen yet, but we know the Druzhba oil pipeline, for the most part, is shut down. You can see there's a major pipeline also that runs from Uneka all the way up to the Ust-Luga port, okay? So that's also a large reason why this Ust-Luga port is shut down, on top of it being attacked this past Sunday. Just wanted to show you that map in case you're not familiar with this Druzhba oil pipeline and how severe and serious it is to help out the Ust-Luga port, and that's why we're seeing them have their exports today. Now, for more translated, Reuters reports Russia's Ust-Luga oil terminal will run at half capacity in September after Ukrainian drone strikes damaged pipelines. Oil will be diverted to Primorsk and Novorossiysk while repairs continue. Russian officials have not commented on the full impact. So here's a video. Just wanted to show you this coming out from over the weekend on Sunday when we had this attack on the Novatek gas export terminal at the Ust-Luga port. Okay, so again, this is that information that I was not able to share with you guys on Sunday, but you can see this drone directly slamming into the facility. And from what I heard, this Novatek gas facility was attacked by up to 10 Ukrainian drones. So Ukraine has been doing a really good job of destroying a lot of gas facilities across Russia. So there's your updates regarding the Ust-Luga port. It is at 50% capacity right now, so that is going to be huge losses for Russia if they're not able to divert many of these oil volumes over to other ports. Now, for more translated, Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara has fully halted operations after a night drone attack on August 28th. At least 29 UAVs struck the site, causing 7 fires and hitting major units. Local officials claim the attack was repelled, but the facility is offline, Astra reports. All right, so Astra reporting today that they have halted operations here at the Kuibyshev oil refinery in the Samara Oblast. We just talked about this yesterday. This was a picture coming out at the time, soon after the drone attack took place. And according to this information, at least 29 UAVs struck that facility. Can you imagine that? I mean, I think that's the most amount of drones I've ever heard being confirmed to strike an oil refinery. So this thing definitely got destroyed, and it looks like they are halting operations here at this facility for good. In the meantime, let's see how long it takes them to get this oil refinery back up online. And we're going to now see even more fuel shortages taking place inside of Russia with yet again another oil refinery shut down. Now, for more translated, Hungarian satellite imagery from August 28th detected smoke at the Samara oil refinery. The automation unit for light gasoline fractions was damaged or destroyed, affecting high-octane fuel production, according to Supernova. So there you go right there, guys, affecting high-octane fuel production. So more fuel shortages will ensue inside of Russia due to this strike now. And again, this is the Kuibyshev oil refinery. Just more information showing some satellite images just coming out today. You can see here August 29th, 2025. This is where the strike took place, at least majority of the damage right at the center of the facility. Here's another image as well showing a major fire that broke out right there on the Kuibyshev. And you can also see here on this heat map, right in the center is where majority of the damage was there. And then one final photo, this kind of a close-up image showing the area that was attacked. Okay, so huge damage here to the Kuibyshev oil refinery. And again, based on sources from Astra, which is a pretty reliable source that's on Russian Telegram channels, they're stating here 29 drones directly struck this facility, knocking it offline. So huge news today on that. Now I want to show you guys a new video that came out today. in regards to fuel shortages in Russia. So look at this from War Translated. Fuel supply problems in Russia are intensifying, with local media reporting a powerful explosion at a Dagestan gas station a few hours ago. Okay, so on top of fuel shortages and oil refineries, oil depots just being smashed, destroyed, oil exports falling to the floor inside of Russia, we have another gas station that exploded here. We've been seeing a lot of this inside of Russia as well. I think we just had a gas station in the Belgorod region, just north of Ukraine's border, just a couple weeks back that was struck by drones and destroyed. Now we had some sort of explosion here in Dagestan. So this is close to like Azerbaijan and Georgia, southwestern Russia, right next to like Chechnya and all that, where the Chechnyan soldiers come from. So take a look at this video, guys, about 30 seconds. Okay, we'll go ahead and pause it right there. So look at this massive explosion from this gas station. I'm not really sure what happened here, but I mean, there is just so many problems ongoing inside of Russia right now in numerous areas. It really doesn't matter what part of Russia, even Russia's far east right now, we've been reporting massive fuel shortages over there. Lines of cars of people waiting at gas stations. Yet again, more destruction to fuel inside of Russia. They've got to be going through a major crisis right now. So now we're going to move on to talk about some of the statements that Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, made today while he was speaking to the press. So let's start off here with Military News UA. It says Zelenskyy announced 3 key blocks of security guarantees for Ukraine. Number 1 is going to be the army, maintaining the current number of military personnel and providing them with weapons thanks to Ukrainian, European, and American production. Number 2 is going to be NATO. Agreements with partners at the leadership level on their readiness to support Ukraine in the event of new aggression. And finally, number 3, sanctions against Russia and the use of frozen Russian assets to restore Ukraine. Okay, so these are the main parts of security guarantees that Ukraine is calling for. So number 1, talking about their army. They're not going to be reducing the size of their army. They want to maintain the current number of military personnel and provide them weapons, adequate weapons to be able to defend themselves. So weapon flows will not stop going to Ukraine even if this war comes to an end, and Ukraine wants to maintain the size of their army, not decrease it like what Russia's asking for. Also talking about NATO here, regarding agreements with partners. Okay, so they want clear security guarantees from their partners at the NATO level. They want them to have in writing and agreements that if Russia were to attack them again, they will come and back them up and support them in the event of new aggression from an attack. And then finally here talking about sanctions against Russia, they want further sanctions onto the Russian economy and also utilize frozen Russian assets sitting in banks in Europe to restore Ukraine with all the destruction that has taken place. So they want Russia to pay directly for all the destruction of attacks inside of Ukraine, drones, missiles, bombs, whatever's been dropped inside of Ukraine. They want them to repay it, and it's going to be repaid through frozen Russian assets. So now we got another report here from War Translated. It says Zelenskyy reports 100,000 Russian troops amassed in Pokrovsk. That's going to be in the Donetsk region, the most critical front. Ukraine fights intensely in Kharkiv and Donetsk, neutralizing 30 sabotage groups in Kupiansk in 2 days. Sumy holds steady, pushing Russians back, while Zaporizhzhia remains tense due to enemy airborne buildup. Diplomacy advances with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, US, and Switzerland. EU talks are planned for next week. Security priorities include funding Ukraine's army, NATO plans for future Russian threats, sanctions, and using frozen Russian assets for reconstruction. We know about that. And then finally here, Russia stalls talks with denazification demands. But the war will end and Putin remains accountable. Strong U.S. pressure could force negotiations, Zelenskyy said. So Zelenskyy again calling for strong pressure onto Russia. He's been calling for sanctions and just whatever type of pressure, secondary sanctions onto Russia's trading partners to force them to the table. So here's just some other major statements and talking about the Pokrovsk direction, that things are very tense over there. 100,000 Russian troops are amassed in that area, but so far they have not been able to take over Pokrovsk, which is a major transport and rail hub city in the Donetsk Oblast. So let me know how you feel on some of these statements here. Now from Bliskovka, next week is the European track. There will be meetings at the level of leaders. Zelenskyy said the goal is to specify security guarantees for Ukraine. Okay, so they're going to be discussing security guarantees with European leaders coming up next week. So we should be hearing a lot of different, statements coming out from top European leaders regarding how they're going to be supporting Ukraine if we happen to see this war come to an end. So expect big news coming up next week. Now, from next to Europe is discussing a possible 40-kilometer buffer zone in Ukraine, according to Politico. The idea envisions a demilitarized area where peacekeepers could operate to monitor a ceasefire. According to the outlet, it's unclear whether Kiev would agree to such a plan, as it could imply territorial concessions. The U.S. is not involved in these talks. So take a look at this report, grasping for straws. Europe floats Ukraine-Russia buffer zone in push for peace. So we did hear some reports the other day. I let you guys know that it seems like Europe is trying to create some sort of demilitarized zone inside of Ukraine. So apparently, what they're shooting for is a possible 40-kilometer buffer zone in Ukraine, right on the front line. So this would be an area that would most likely be patrolled by a neutral party of peacekeeping troops. We've heard that that could possibly be Turkey. Apparently, Trump, has been coming out saying that he wants China to be a part of that. But I think Ukraine did come out today and say they don't want China to be involved in any kind of peacekeeping operation inside of Ukraine when this war ends, because they don't trust them, because they've been supplying support to Moscow and Russia, right? So we'll have to see how that's going to go. But was a big talk today between European partners discussing a possible 40-kilometer buffer zone in Ukraine. And this was Zelensky's response to that. This is from Visioner. If they're talking about buffer zones, the buffer zone already exists. If Russia wants to be at a greater distance from us, then they should retreat deeper into the occupied territories. This was Zelensky's response to the notion, gaining traction in the West, that ending the war would require the creation of buffer zones between Ukrainian and Russian forces along different fronts. So Zelensky coming out with a very smart statement here, claiming that the buffer zone already exists, and I have to agree with that. The Russians control a large majority of the eastern and southern side of Ukraine. They've already got their buffer zone. So Zelensky's saying that if Putin wants to create this buffer zone, why don't they just move further into the territories that they control instead of forcing Ukraine to give up more territory in the Donetsk region, let's say, for example. Why don't they just have the Russians move back? So basically stating that they're not going to be willing to move an inch on the front line. They're not giving up a single territory over to the Russians, or even creating a demilitarized zone in these areas that Europe wants to. Now, for Bliskovka, Russia's proposal for a new level of delegations is another attempt to artificially postpone the meeting of the leaders, Zelensky says. They want to show the U.S. that they are constructive, but the Russians are not constructive. Unfortunately, because people are dying, the president added. So these were some other statements he made today talking about this new level of delegations. That was from Sergei Lavrov, actually, the Russian foreign minister. He stated the other day that Russia's ready to prepare a new set of delegations, or create a new level, kind of getting some higher level delegation speakers or members to meet with Ukraine again. Still kind of avoiding the fact that Putin and Zelensky need to meet. And what we're seeing right now is there's going to be no meeting between Putin and Zelensky. So if there's not going to be a meeting between them two, we know this war is not going to end anytime soon. They can discuss things all they want, but at the end of the day, it's up to Putin to make the real decision. So that's why Ukraine's really pushing to have Zelensky meet with Putin. But so far, we're not seeing that to be the case, as the Russians don't want to hold a meeting with Zelensky. So as you can see here, Zelensky just kind of calling out the Russians, saying they're not serious about ending this war, basically. All right, now for Max 25. The 2 weeks that Trump gave Putin expire on Monday. Zelensky said that Ukraine will remind everyone of this. We are waiting for serious steps. Permitting men aged 18 to 22 to leave will have no impact on Ukraine's defense capability. So the first one here, Zelensky kind of commenting on Trump coming out recently saying that he was going to give Putin 2 weeks to end this war. If not, are we going to see some sort of sanctions or something like that? So far, we're not seeing anything like that from Trump. He just comes out every 2 weeks and giving another 2 weeks to Vladimir Putin. I personally don't think he's going to put any pressure onto President Putin or Russia. But if he does, he will probably put some sort of sanctions or tariffs onto Ukraine as well, because we did hear that recently from Trump, that he was willing to put pressure on either side. So I think if we do see pressure onto Russia, he will do the same to Ukraine. And then finally, you're talking about men aged 18 to 22 leaving the country. There was a report that came out on that over the last few days that the Ukrainian government is allowing men of that age to leave the country during martial law, when before they were not. as they could be needed for for the military or whatnot. So apparently they're able to leave, and he's saying that there will be no impact to their defense capability. So we'll see how that goes. Now, moving on to Ukrainian review, fewer and fewer boys are graduating from school in Ukraine. It's very bad, Zelenskyy says. We do not see mass departures of young people from Ukraine. Those who want to leave have already left long ago, Zelenskyy says. We believe that a large percentage of people will return to Ukraine after the war. So maybe that's why they relaxed those restrictions and allowed men age 18 to 22. Maybe it's a small minority of people that actually wanted to leave, as they probably already left a long time ago, as he states here. So looks like they're still having some issues with their demographics and shortage of people inside of Ukraine. I'm sure that's a huge issue due to a lot of people leaving at the start of this war, and maybe even trying to continue to leave due to all these heavy attacks inside of Ukraine from Russian missiles and drones. Now, for military news UA, we cannot restore the borders with weapons today. We do not have enough strength. But Russia will not be able to occupy us either, says Zelenskyy. So him commenting today and admitting that the Ukrainian military does not have the ability to restore their borders and retake all this land from the Russians that has been taken over the past 3 years. But on top of that, he's stating that Russia will not be able to occupy them and destroy Ukraine completely. So you guys can let me know how you feel on that statement there. Then our final update here from Nexta, the EU is preparing to send trainers to Ukraine. We have trained more than 80,000 soldiers and must be ready to do even more, said EU Foreign Policy Chief Kuibyshev after a meeting of EU defense ministers in Copenhagen. According to her, Russia responds to peace initiatives only with missile strikes, which means Ukraine must receive even more military support. Since the start of the war, the EU has already allocated over 63 billion euros, including 25 billion euros in 2024. So here's a statement coming out from Kaja Kallas today. She's the EU vice president, or the vice president of the EU Commission, excuse me. And she's basically stating that Europe is preparing to send military trainers into Ukraine in the event that we get a ceasefire and an end to this war between Ukraine and Russia. So I got a 1-minute clip here. Take a look at this. There will be some subtitles here in the middle, but she is speaking in English.
The EU and our member states have already provided over 63 billion euro in military support to Ukraine since the war began, and in 2025, 25 billion. And I welcome that several EU member states have made new pledges just in the last days. Aid to Ukraine saves lives. I welcome that there is a broad support today to expand our EU military mission mandate to provide training and advice inside Ukraine after any truce. We are the largest provider of training to Ukraine's military. We have trained over 80,000 soldiers so far, and we must be ready to do more. This could include placing EU trainers in Ukrainian military academies and institutions. In parallel, our civilian mission can strengthen Ukraine's resilience against Russian hybrid attacks.
Okay, so this is a huge statement from the EU Vice President Kaja Kallas today, and her discussing the fact they're planning to send troops into Ukraine after we get some sort of truce between Ukraine and Russia. And we've been hearing a lot about this recently. The only concern right now is how far is NATO willing to get involved inside of Ukraine? What are they willing to do? Where are they willing to deploy troops at? As we've been hearing that they might even just be deployed on the western side of Ukraine. And there could be some sort of like neutral peacekeeping force that monitors the demilitarized zone if one gets created. And then on top of that, Ukrainian troops would be behind those neutral party forces. So yeah, that's just a big concern, because there was also stories coming out just a couple days ago. I showed to you guys that apparently the Coalition of the Willing is actually dropping the amount of troops they plan to send to Ukraine. I think they were planning somewhere around 30,000 troops, but they have decreased that immensely down to 6,000 to 10,000. So, we continue to hear more and more every day that Europe is showing less support for deploying some sort of peacekeeping contingent into Ukraine. So we're going to have to see what they plan to do. I just wanted to give you guys some updates today. Lots more news coming out, and I want to thank you very much for being here. So let me know what you think about all these details down below in the comment section. But that's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, Hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.